this segment I debated strongly doing because what I don't want to do, and I want to be crystal clear, is again, I'm not trying to alarm anyone, but folks, it is 2020. And for some reason, this is the year like 1968 where everything decided to happen at one time. Not having a plan is no excuse. Tim Carney at the Washington Examiner asks a question this morning in a piece. It's a must read, again, in the show notes. Well, what if something happens to Biden or Trump? Early voting creates another reason for the Electoral College. I don't want to sound depressing here, but folks, these are all things that have to be considered. They're not spring chickens, either one of these guys. I obviously, as I've said always about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, whenever you're having these conversations, rest her soul now, I obviously don't wish ill on anyone. We're all children of God. That would be disgusting. But for us not to prepare for these types of questions, given all that's happened so far in 2020, is pure, unadulterated insanity. What happens if a health crisis arrives and one of these two can't follow through? Forget about the more tragic outcome. What if they have to pull out of the race because of some, God forbid, some disease or something? Not a fair question to ask what happens? Well, Carney addresses that in this piece, and I strongly encourage you to read it. Strongly. Well, the electors. That's when the electors meet in state capitals. So, hold on. Keep this up a second. Remember what I told you, December 14th. You know what? Come back to me. I just want to explain. I should have done this. Is my fault, not Paula's. I shouldn't have called for that as quickly as I did. Folks, the presidential election does not happen on election day. That's when you vote. Everybody understand that? You vote on election day. It's not a popular vote election. It's not. Your vote matters in your state, where whoever wins the popular vote within those states, with the exception of Nebraska and Maine that have congressional districts that do it a little differently. If you win the popular vote in Florida, if Trump gets one more vote in Florida than Biden, then those 29 electors, presidential electors, they vote when? On December 14th. That's the real election day. You have to vote on November 3rd, just to be crystal clear. But the real selection of a president, ladies and gentlemen, occurs on December 14th, a date Joe and I and Paula now have brought up on this show 10, 15 times. December 14th is the day the president is picked. You vote on November 3rd. But the presidential electors are the ones that pick a president through the electoral college. I'm sorry, I don't want to do basic history, but sadly, a lot of liberals are confused by this. They still think the popular vote determines the president. It doesn't. It has nothing to do with it. The popular vote in the states does. So what Carney's getting at here is, what if something happens after Election Day, November 3rd, but before December 14th, when the presidential electors actually pick the president? Now he's go back to the piece. Sorry, that was my fault, not Paula's. Because the audience feedback, they hate it. You can't blame anything. Paula's, everybody loves Paula and Joe. I always get thrown under the bus here. They're the best. This was my fault. So here you go. Tim Carney's talking about December 14th. That's when the electors meet in their state capitals and vote for president. December 14th. For that reason, the party of the deceased, God forbid, candidate wouldn't want to change the name on the ballot before Election Day in any shady ways. They could just rely on electors to do the work. In New Jersey, for instance, Democrats would simply leave Biden on the ballot and let him win the state, even if he couldn't serve. Then on December 14th, all 14 New Jersey electors will gather in Trenton, and they could all just vote for Harris. So, scenario number one. You don't remove that person from the ballot, God forbid they're deceased or something else. The electors just meet, and they pick who they want. As he gives the example in New Jersey, they'd meet and say, God forbid, again, something happens to Biden, Harris is their person. They can pick him. The electors can do what they want. There's another scenario here. Tim Carney, back to the Washington Examiner piece. He says, having said that, because that seems to clear it up, right, Joe? The electors just pick who they want. If Biden or Trump can't serve, they pull out, withdraw, they just pick Pence or pick Harris, right? Carney goes on, he says, well, I'm not saying there's no window for drama here, however. Some states have faithless elector laws that prohibit electors from going rogue. But the recent Supreme Court decision, listen to this, allowing those laws had a footnote. Quote, Nothing in this opinion should be taken to permit the states to bind electors to a deceased candidate. Little background on that. Supreme Court just ruled on what they call faithless electors, meaning, let's say again, Trump wins the popular vote in Florida. Trump, according to our law, gets all 29 of Florida's electors. That's it. Simple as that on December 14th. The Supreme Court just ruled on what's known as faithless electors, Joe, where one or two of those people in Florida say, no, I don't have to do what the popular vote says. I'm going to vote for Biden, even though Trump won the popular vote. The Supreme Court said, no, you're not. Faithless elector laws, you're going to vote who the state says you're going to vote for. Thank you, period, full stop. Tracking? Faithless electors, you can't do it. However, little footnote there. Supreme Court says, but you're not bound to vote for a deceased candidate. God forbid something were to happen again. They're not bound to vote for anyone. Now, here's the ultimate chaos scenario. What if a state, because their faithless electors aren't bound to vote for a deceased candidate, what if a state, if it happens before the election, changes the name on the ballot to someone else because one of those candidates can't go on? Well, that would create some real chaos, because then what would happen? Ladies and gentlemen, some states are already voting, Virginia and otherwise, meaning the Democrat vote, say it were Biden, and Biden withdrew, would be split amongst who, Joe? Biden and Harris. Tim Carney, takeaway number 3, read this piece. Also, the ability of Biden or Trump to serve could be ambiguous, which would also throw things into turmoil. Finally, one party could try to win a state by removing the deceased candidate from the ballot partway through the election. Imagine Florida's very close, and Biden dies 2 weeks out. Then Republicans could remove his name from the election day ballot and replace him with Harris, splitting the Democrat vote in a state and allowing Trump to win with a plurality well below 50%. Listen, I'm not trying to scare anyone, ladies and gentlemen. It's 2020. I am not taking anything off the table. I simply want you to have in your head what happens. Your legislators should know that this stuff is all a possibility, and they should have a plan going forward what would happen. Not having a plan is a recommendation and a plan to fail. That's what that is.
You just heard Dan Bongino.